There is a cold that never leaves the soil of Belarus, a chill from a retreat that became a rout. I found its source in a frozen patch of earth that held more than just bones. It began in the archive of a small French town, Flavigny-sur-Ozerain, where the diary of a sapper in the Grande Armée, one Corporal Jacques Lefèvre, had been donated by his descendants. It was a miracle of preservation, its pages stained with campfire soot and something darker. Most of it was the mundane misery of the 1812 campaign. But an entry dated November 25, 1812, written in a shaky, desperate hand near the Berezina River, held the secret. The Marshal himself gave the order. We were to enter the Emperor's bronze and yellow metal, the heavy things from the churches. We did it by the double-trunked pine at the edge of the Great Marsh, where the last of the horse artillery sank. The colonel said it was for a new army. We all knew we were digging our own memorial. I marked the azimuth. 220 degrees from the twin trunks, 150 toises. God forgive us, and may someone with warmer hands than ours find it. Most historians dismissed it as the hallucination of a frozen, doomed man. But the details were too specific. Bronze and yellow metal. Gilt, bronze and gold. The Marshal could have been Ney, the rearguard commander, or Mortier, tasked with destroying the Kremlin. The double-trunked pine was a possible landmark. The hunt for Napoleon's $75 million Moscow loot had begun. Clue 1. The pine by the sunken guns. The Berezina crossing was chaos, but modern historical GIS has mapped the army's desperate movements. The Great Marsh, where the last of the horse artillery sank, pointed to a specific boggy area east of the river, where French records noted the loss of several precious Gribeauval cannons. Using declassified Cold War-era spy satellite imagery and Wabi-Puig Luftwaffe aerial photos, we looked for distinctive, enduring tree formations in that area. One image from 1943 showed a peculiar, V-shaped cluster of trees on a slight rise overlooking the bog. By 2023, it was a dense thicket. LiDAR scans, however, revealed the underlying topography. Two massive, ancient root systems growing from a single base, a double-trunked pine long since fallen and regenerated. We trekked to the coordinates in late autumn, the ground hard with frost. At the base of the trees, metal detectors found nothing. But following Corporal Lefèvre's azimuth of 220 degrees, magnetic bearing circa 1812, corrected for declination, for 150 toises, a Napoleonic unit equal to about 292 meters, led us to a low, hummocky mound covered in brambles. Ground-penetrating radar showed a large, dense metallic object about 2 meters down. Excavation revealed not gold, but a piece of the tragedy itself. A French 12-pounder cannon, its carriage rotted away, its muzzle plunged into the clay as if it had been driven into the earth. But it was a marker. Digging around it, we found a sealed lead tube wired to the touch hole. Inside the tube was a water-damaged but legible map on oilcloth, and a single tarnished eagle insignia from a cuirassier's helmet. The map showed a section of forest with a red X. Scrawled on the back was, "The treasure is not with the gun is the gnomon. At the winter solstice noon, follow the shadow. The lock answers to the date of our disgrace." Clue 2. The solstice shadow and the date of disgrace. We had to wait for the winter solstice. On December 21st, under a pale Belarusian sun, we cleared the snow from the cannon. At true solar noon, the long, cold shadow of the barrel lay across the frozen ground like a pointing finger. We marked its tip, 47 meters away. Beneath that spot, we found not a chest, but a flat, moss-covered stone slab. Under the slab was a vertical shaft lined with brick, an old dry well or cache. At the bottom rested a single ornate object, a Russian Orthodox processional cross, 2 feet high, made of gilded silver. It had been ripped from a church, but its purpose here was as a key. The cross's stem was hollow. Inside was a rolled parchment. The parchment was a list, in French, written by a quartermaster. It itemized loot: 37 gold chalices, 42 kilos of gilt altar plating, 19 jeweled icon covers, and the golden rooster of the Ivan the Great bell tower. The last was legendary, a giant weather vane, supposedly solid gold. At the bottom was a code. The combination is the date Moscow was abandoned. In the Republican calendar we betrayed. Reverse the digits of the day. Napoleon abandoned Moscow on October 19, 1812. The French Republican calendar was abolished by Napoleon in 1806, but old soldiers might still use it. October 19th was 28 Vendémiaire in year 21 of the Republic. The day was the 28th. Reversing the digits gave 82. Clue 3. The cache of the eagle and the rooster. The back of the processional cross had a small numbered dial set into the gilding, like a combination lock. We turned it to 82. A click. A hidden compartment in the cross's base opened, revealing a small, exquisite brass key. But a key to what? The shaft where we found the cross had solid walls. We re-examined the LiDAR data for the immediate area. It showed a subtle, linear depression leading from the shaft into the side of the nearby hillock, a collapsed tunnel. We excavated along the depression. 3 meters in, we hit a wall of timber shoring, still sound. Behind it was a door, a massive, iron-reinforced oak slab, crudely but powerfully built. In its center was a keyhole. The brass key fit. The door swung inward on groaning hinges. The air was frigid, still, and carried the faint metallic scent of old gold. Our headlamps illuminated a sight of both breathtaking wealth and profound sadness. Clue 4. The retreat's reserve. The chamber was a hurriedly excavated cavern, shored up with rough-cut logs. It was not filled with neat chests, but with a desperate jumble. There were sacks spilling gold thread and gemstones pried from icons. There were crates containing flattened sheets of gilded silver, altar plating hammered into transportable form. Piled in a corner were church vessels, dented and stacked like tin cups. And in the center, wrapped in rotting velvet and canvas, was the prize, the golden rooster. It was not solid gold, as myth suggested, but hollow, a masterwork of gilt copper over a wooden frame, yet its value as a symbolic trophy was immense. Beside it lay the true bullion, several heavy crude ingots, gold melted down from smaller items in field furnaces to save space. They bore no mint marks, only the scar of hasty casting. This was not the main Kremlin treasure, which history says was mostly recovered. This was the rearguard's share, the portion a savvy marshal, likely the pragmatic, tough Marshal Ney, set aside. It was an insurance policy. If the army shattered, a cadre of loyal men could return, retrieve this, and finance a resistance or a return to glory. They never made it. The men who knew the location died in the snows of the retreat or on the battlefields of 1813, 1814. Among the loot was a final, personal touch. A rolled-up portrait of Napoleon and a sealed letter addressed to the next Marshal of France. It read, "From the ashes of Moscow a phoenix of gold. Use it to restore the eagles. Do not let our sacrifice be for nothing. N." The initial was flourishes, but unmistakably that of Marshal Ney, the bravest of the brave. The phoenix that never rose. The discovery created a diplomatic and historical sensation. Belarus, Russia, and France all had claims. The hoard was incontrovertibly looted Russian cultural property, found on Belarusian soil, hidden by the French. The valuation was a somber affair. The raw gold, from melted artifacts and ingots, weighed approximately 400 kilograms. Its bullion value was around $25 million. But the historical value of the intact, identifiable church items, the processional cross, the chalices, the rooster, was incalculable. They represented a national trauma for Russia. For France, they represented an infamous moment of imperial overreach. A complex international agreement was reached. The raw gold ingots were considered confiscated wealth and remained in Belarus as state property. The identifiable religious artifacts were repatriated to Russia in a solemn ceremony. The letter and portrait of Ney were given to the French Musée de l'Armée. The conservative aggregate value assigned to the entire hoard for the purposes of the finder's reward and historical accounting was $75 million. The true discovery. The true treasure was not the gold. It was the poignant, failed pragmatism of Marshal Ney. In the midst of one of history's great military catastrophes, he tried to salvage a future. He buried not just loot, but a seed of hope for the Empire's resurrection. He understood that glory could be rebuilt, but only with the cold, hard currency he interred under a double-trunked pine. For over 2 centuries, the Belarusian winter froze that hope solid, preserving it in the bitter earth until a sapper's diary and a historian who listened to the chill in the soil followed the shadow of a sunken cannon. The Emperor's gold was meant to buy a return. Instead, it bore only a testament to the bravery and futility of the men he left behind in the snow.